The next application of absorbent ground will be hopefully with two colours, and that'll be the colours that will stay in the ground, and then as I'm painting I'll have an underpainting already on the canvas. That's the plan. So the canvas is actually sanded again. This is the second canvas. It's not the one that has the two coats on. This one only has one coat, and this will be the second coat on this canvas. Sanded fairly smooth. And now I have cobalt blue, and I'll mix some cobalt blue in with the water and then back into the actual ground. So now I'll have blue ground. Depending on how bright you want it as blue, it's going to be fairly bright, but that will make a blue ground, and I'll have a pink ground. Make sure that's mixed fairly well. You could have some clouds, I guess, but we don't want clouds at this stage. We just want the colour on the canvas. Move it over a little bit and then move it back. It's got a little bit of blue, darker blue in there, but I'm not going to worry about that. We'll see what happens. Clean off the palette knife and then add the pink to it. So I'm not sure about the amount of rose madder. We'll just go a bit easy on the rose madder to start with. That's probably not a bad colour. Don't think I want it much brighter than that. We'll have a really bright pink section of the canvas, which I don't think I really want. So I'll move that back away. Clean your palette knives. It's really hard once that gets stuck on a palette knife. The roller is still a bit damp from the last application, so I'm going to actually move over this way and see if I can get some blue on that side of the roller. Probably got enough ground to do 6 canvases. And then over this way and see if I can get the pink on the roller. And going into purple, need more pink. See what happens. I'll go a little bit sideways. I don't want it to have just a straight section of pink. See if I can load it again into the blue, into the pink. Got a bit more pink on this time, hopefully. That's something you don't want, where you get ridges. I don't know whether you can see that, but there's ridges of actual, that's better. You can see the ridges in that. You don't really want that too much. And that's the thing I was saying about, now you've got colour, you can see what I'm talking about, where the roller is rolling in different places. So I'll change the roller angle and just get that to happen. Backwards and forwards, changing the roller so that takes those stripes out of it. Ow. Okay, now I'll turn the canvas around and come back the other way. So I'll load the blue on the roller, load the pink on the roller. That's the thing that I was talking about with those edges. I'll go a little bit diagonal in it. So now I've got a scene can happen on this canvas later over the top of that. Don't put your original colour on too dark, or you'll be straining to get your watercolour to actually take over the top of it. Just on the edge there. If I roll too much, I'll end up with different colours like that, where I've just gone over that. This is not done properly here at the edge. And I'll turn it round and get that other mark out that I put in it just now. Back here. Okay, so what have I achieved? Just got a little bit of a stripy effect in places, but that will come out if I just keep working backwards and forwards in it. And again, I don't know what colour, if you put anything over the edge, you'd put the blue over the edge. You'd actually have blue. You can see that there now, it's changed to blue. So your application's complete when you get that colour all the way around. I'll leave the pattern in it because if I plane it too much, I'll probably make it worse by trying to do that, by trying to do too much. Come over the edge there, turn it round. Still got the blue edge. We don't have any pink out in the edges. There's only blue. I think it's going to a lovely sort of lilac colour now anyway. Now that goes completely dry and then you get a chance to paint on it. With a landscape, anything you want to paint on that, you can then paint on it. Put down and dry it. It's time to paint up my canvas that was previously painted with cobalt blue and rose madder and reversed to mirror the top and the bottom so that we've got the pink through the middle of the artwork. I'm going to be using a Skoda 12 brush and a Skoda 6, a fine and thicker rigger or liner, a quarter inch square shader, and maybe just a rough Chinese brush. That's the brushes that I'll be using. I also will be using French ultramarine, cobalt blue, burnt sienna, perylene maroon, Australian red gold in Art Spectrum paint, and Winsor yellow. The others are all Winsor & Newton. The only colour that's not is the Australian red gold. Okay, so the canvas needs to be sanded to start with a light sanding. I have done a little bit of drawing on it just to give myself some bearings of what's going to be on there. And so really I'm working along the background here. I'll just make it a little bit darker now. In through here, around, and to come out around about a third of the way out. That'll be the water, and that'll be the sky. This will have trees along here and some trees coming in over the edge of the canvas. So I'll start out by laying the actual ground underneath everything. Now that'll be something like a light Australian red gold. I'll just grey that down a little bit with a little bit of ultramarine and burnt sienna. That's my greyish sort of colour, and that greys things down. So that'll mean that the colour in the background won't be as vibrant as the colour as I come forward with underneath the trees and everything that I'm going to put in there. So that's sort of just the little bit of colour on there on the ground. And so that'll just form something for that to sit on. It'll start to get a little bit more vibrant as it comes forward. I can have it with whatever height or shape that I want. And just coming forward, I'm starting to get into some more richer colour. So I'll go into the Australian red gold and a little bit of perylene maroon. And so the perylene maroon will go into that and form like a redder sort of colour. Keep going until I get the colour I want, and that'll start to get stronger in the colours. That'll go into that, and that will be in behind everything and start to get more of an Australian colour in there. It can have some greens. I've got Winsor yellow and French ultramarine. Put some greens in it and just keep bringing colours in. It's a bit watery now. Don't want too much green in it because there isn't too much green. It's more of a rich Australian colour. Australian red gold is one of the favourites. I love Australian red gold. You can also put a little burnt sienna in that as well. That's got some burnt sienna now, so that gives more of a a richer colour down the foreground, and then the trees will go on this later. So that's just the basis to sort of start with. I'm not particularly going over the edge of the canvas, so I can wipe that off later. I could do it with a rag and clean that up, simply because this is solid, it won't move, but the underpainting will. So I'll just go over enough so that I can actually take it back later and wash that off. If I don't go far enough, then I'll have a gap between it. Okay, so that's the underpainting, going light, getting stronger and coming forward. A little bit more stronger colour through here. And that'll have the trees and that on it. That'll go up to the edge of the water. So make sure it's not just a straight edge. Make sure it's interesting. And I'll let that dry. Over the other side here, I have some trees. I don't want that to finish with nothing there, so I'll just sort of make that go in behind there, very, very light. And so over in this corner, I've got some trees. So the trees over there are going to be in a bit of a Windsor yellow at the top, a little bit light to start with up here, and I'll just scrape onto that. That's one tree there, that'll come down and be anchored onto the actual water with a dark underneath it. That'll be just underneath there. That's just got some shading underneath it. And then I'd repeat what I just did to have it in the water. So that was just the greens again. Just start down here. It's a darker green, so I'll add it up into this so it just stays light at the top and it's getting this colour down the bottom. And then I can go more into the yellow and get it to be lighter up the top here. So they'll just go together there, about the same height. And then I'll get the square brush and just some water on it, just a very little water on the square brush, and just bring it down. So it'll look more like the mirror image of the tree in the water. So now it's actually got some area coming down through it. Now I can still keep painting into that while it's wet. I've got one of the fine riggers at the moment, and I'm going to use ultramarine and burnt sienna. Just darken that underneath between the two, and because it's still wet, it'll do different things on there and run slightly. It would probably have branches coming up into it as well, and I'll take out some of that in a minute. Doesn't please me what I just did. And then down, go the same direction that it's going, down in the water. And so the ones that are up the top there, as I said, I'm not that pleased with them, but I have some darks to go in that tree. The tree needs to show some sort of dark, so I'll use more ultramarine in the green, and that'll make a darker colour into that as well. So I have overall colour, I have some highlights at the top, and now I'm sort of getting in some darks. That can just go into there. So now I'm going to go up to the top and have a tree that's coming in from the outside edge. And I've got thick paint now on the brush, quite thick. Dry it on the tissue. There'd need to be some branches coming in, and I always do branches with the brush loaded for the greenery so that the branches are not just sitting there and dry and then have this branch work going through it. And so the branch is going to be coming in onto the actual canvas, in through here, down in through there. Now, if I do this while it's still wet, it'll actually take some of those branches out. It'll leave some, but it'll take other branches out. Don't need to have too much going to the edge, although just a little bit in the corner. Maybe just a little bit further down, just to sort of anchor that onto the page. Otherwise it looks lonely. It looks like there's nothing else there. Okay, so coming back to this section, that needs to be dry-ish as I work, but I'm going to go up the back now while it's not dry, because I need a softer, lighter green, and that's over here, just in the palette. The brush has still got a lot of dark green on it, so I'll dry the brush completely, add some water to the tip of the brush, and that can start the actual greenery that's over here. just little tiny bits of greenery. Not too high, goes in behind that lot. Touch it, drop it, lift it, and that will have the mirror image of those trees in the water. So what I'm going to do is put them there, and then before it dries too much, just bring that down into the water. Come back and just touch it again where it disturbed it up on the bank, and then you'll see some of the shading coming down through there. The trees will get a little bit darker now, a little bit stronger in paint virtually on my brush. They can be different colours as well, but I'll leave a gap in that so you can see some of the background, some of the top of the trees, take out some of that line that's where it's sort of dividing the ground from the background. These trees will come forward as well, and so there'll be trees in through there. Now what I'm going to do is let that dry and come back to it. So I'll just touch that a little bit. You can get some highlights in that as well by just coming back later and lifting that out. Because of the type of painting that we're doing on the surface, that will allow us to lift paint better than even on watercolour paper. I'm about to paint the rest of the background trees in behind, but what I'm going to do is turn it upside down. It's a great way to not recognise exactly what you're painting, and I feel that you get a better result in doing that. So it's in a darker green, and so I'll come along here just a little bit further out than this and start to get the background trees. Now the background trees will be created by the brush doing the background of it, some higher ones, lower ones. They're sort of coming along in a straight line there. I'll turn it round and have a look what I've done before I go too far. And so what I can see there is an unusual top to the trees, so I'm going to muck that up by coming back, coming underneath here, just make sure it's darker underneath the trees, maybe coming up higher in a couple of places. And so your line of trees change from one side to the other, and then you're getting just something that sort of shows you a different view of the trees coming through there. Some of that can just wash into itself to push it back up. And so now I've got the ground behind getting lighter as well. If I just continue there, I'll end up with the same result. So what I'm going to do is pick up some darker paint and put some darker and lighter in there. Just some bigger sections, some finer sections, just brush marks. That's all it is. I'll go back around and come back the other way again into Windsor Yellow and Ultramarine and start again. The back of the brush does something. The trees can get larger. There can be other trees coming closer, but you're just getting the difference. I'll come back here and introduce that colour because the colours change all the time. And if I do that, then I get a chance to get different colours into the trees. If I actually put more yellow on the brush now and dry the brush, I'll get some softer edges as if the sun's coming through this way, and just lighten the top of those. If I get some tops nice up through there, don't fill them in as far as I'm trying to get above them to get some gaps between the trees. That's better. So I come up higher, down lower, so that's in behind. Come back here, just ease out some of that. It doesn't have to be different, it can be different levels. Like it go up higher in that lot and come down lower in this lot, so that then the trees have different areas that you're actually seeing them. Now a lot of these trees are going to have other trees over the top of them, and I'll start to get more of those trees in as well, and they'll be smaller trees, but the trees that come towards you will get larger as I go. So to do that, I'll just get the square brush and start to get some of the branches out through here and start to get some trees that would be a little bit taller. Don't want to do too much with this because it gets very stilted. It gets the sameness all over, whereas that didn't when I just did that because it changed the bottom of the tree. I can come back and get it a little bit lighter and just keep going. The faster I do this, the better off it'll be. If I come down further and get a taller tree, it's still quite wet there. The best way to get these out is to get them out while the background's dry, but that's okay. I'll just keep going. Some smaller trees out through here, bit of a gap between them so you can see some of the landform up through here. Leave a gap, come over this side. That makes a green tree up there. If you don't want it green, just bring it back. But because this is stable behind, you can do whatever you want through there and it won't hurt. Get some of the trees to have wider. That's a wider trunk on that one, maybe leaning sideways. That's wiped out. It's coming back off. Maybe not a good shape, but I'll deal with that later. Just don't get them to have the same branches at the same place. This can have just a little bit more to a bottom to it. Just a little bit of something along there just to get the land back on. The background there, that can have the darks in the background. Doesn't matter to me that it's got the darks in through there. And then I'll start to get one really good tree after I finish these. I'll turn it around again and get the rest of some of those trees on. And that will be the rigger, liner rigger, and just the ultramarine and burnt sienna will just give me a brown. And that can come out of here and start to get something else on these trees on the darker side, which is that side. That come up a little bit further than I wanted, the reason being that it was dry, the brush was dry, and I had to come back again, and I don't really like to do that. This one here is coming out up through there. I'll leave that side of it at this stage. I can always come back to that. This one's up. Just a little bit up through there on that one. Don't try too hard. There's one over the other side here. That one there. Lay the brush down. Let the brush do its work. This one's down further, so I'll get some really good dark on there, but it's taller. So I can come back and wipe those out a little bit stronger. Okay, still continuing on with the darks, higher. This one now is a really tall tree. On the dark side, continue up through there. Don't be afraid to cross over some of the branches. Just make that a little bit stronger. That can come over to here and go over those. They don't have to miss. Trees do all sorts of things, and just keep working with your rigger. And I'm on the dark side of the trees. It's a bit blue on that. I don't worry about that. I wouldn't care whether it's blue or not. I'll turn it around and see what I've actually created. So I've got a lot of trees through there, but not a lot of highlights. So I'm coming back for highlights, and that means the square brush in my hand with a tissue also in my hand as well. And so the tissue is the thing that will dry the brush and make it stronger to make that a little bit lighter in through there. Come back into that one. And just keep wiping until I get the trees to have that lightness that I'm looking for. That one's a much better tree. It could have something else coming off it as well, so that they're not just single trunked. I've got two together the same there, so I'll shift this one over and bring it down further. So I'm looking at what's actually been created as well. Some of it's disappearing, which is okay as well. This one's quite light through there, but not at the top. I'll go out this way because I can see that there. That would be a mistake to put that up with it. I can have it off here. Even then it's not that crash hot, but that'll come up and it'll have greenery over it. This one here can come down further. And that makes that taller than the tree that's in front of it. Looks like they almost join up there, but I can fiddle around with that later. can deal with that later. The sun was coming from this side, so there'd be a little bit of a shadow under these trees as well. So now I need the major tree that I want to get in through here. And I'll go upside down, but I'll get the greenery on these first. And so I've got Windsor Yellow and Ultramarine, and it's very dry. Let the brush separate. I give these brushes quite a bit of hard work. Over here they'll be a little bit lighter, so I'll put a little bit of Australian Red Gold in them over here. And so that'll put the top on the gum trees. Just be careful and make sure you get over some of the underneath work so that you've got something else happening. I can have other branches up higher. A little bit more dampness, but not a lot. Just a little touch of the top of the water. I always need to see the top of the water, because if I can't see the top of the water, I don't know how much waters and paint is on the brush. That'll come up higher. It can get a little bit darker now. Not enough water, just a tiny bit. Just the tip of the brush can pick up some of the branches. Needs to be darker. A little bit more paint, a little bit more blue. And that's a bit wet, so I'll leave that. That's better. So the greenery is getting darker as I come over. And just keep working with that. Go out of the picture higher than lower. I don't want to go out going down too far. I'll come up a little bit higher. So I'll turn these around now, and you can see it's sort of faded quite a bit as well, but that's okay. Turn those round. Ultramarine and burnt sienna again. So I've got darks. You could put it as a green if you wanted to, have greener tips on the leaves, but I find that I need to be able to see it. I've just put a bit of yellow in it there as well. So it's sort of like a darker green. But what I'll do is come up higher now and get some very fine branches up in the top section of these trees where you'd see them coming up the top. More so these trees can have more branches on them and finer branches coming up to those top bits and pieces of greenery. You need to be able to see sections coming up your trees. Otherwise you've just got nothing going on there. Just sort of come back and touch it with some different bits and pieces. Just rubbish. That's rubbish, what I call rubbish. Just putting colour in. That's all it is. So you turn it round, and what it looks like is that there's some stumps in there or things that haven't grown properly. So it starts to create other areas on it. Now the next thing will be the main tree that will come up through there. So I'll basically make sure it's try to be on around about the third, probably about here. And those trees will be behind it, and they'll go right up through there. So again, I'll start to wash that out. Before I do, I'll actually start to get some darks in around this base, which is in like a really dark bluey sort of a shade, not much green, more a blue. I'll put some cobalt in it. We've got the sky cobalt, some browns in it, and that will make it into a grey. But that will actually probably a bit more burnt sienna. So I just play with colours on the brush and then just sort of bring some colour around in the foreground here. Just something to make the scene different, so it's not looking like just the same thing that you've got everywhere in the scene. Coming around the water's edge here, there's nothing going on yet, but I will come around there. So I'll work on the large tree first and upside down. I can get a better angle on what I've got if I have it upside down. So it was going to come in about here, and so that tree will come right up through here. It'll take a while to wash out to start with, but if you get water on there, that'll start to work. Put it down hard, keep working. So the tree will come up to a certain distance and then it will come out up over those other trees. it'll arch out a little bit more that way and come up. It'll go into finer parts to the tree up here. Don't want it green, so I'll take it back down. The green just come up with the trees that are behind, that's all right. So I'll come back down here, get that to enter into the main trunk of the tree, get it to come right down here near the water. Just keep wiping it out. If you actually touch it with a tissue, you'll get more off it as well. Give it a bit more shape here. Now the rest of the tree can come after that. This probably would have started another branch coming up this way. Make it go out. This is the main branch going out that way, so I'll make that stronger. That probably will about do it to there. So it's coming up through there. So I'll turn it round and have a look and see what I've actually created. But I'm going to come back the other side now and make this tree stronger. So now it's getting some strength in that. Through here. Okay, so that's enough to start with. And then I can get my rigger and start working at the top of the tree. Just get some of the branches. And so the branches will come up. And basically, I've got more of a different colour now. I've got a bit of a blue-green. So if I wanted to add them onto those branches, I'd actually put water along that branch. And so now, when that comes on, it'll go down that branch as well as up. So now it's got some colour coming out through there on the base of that tree. And so again, I'll put some water down this one. Put a fair bit on that one. I didn't need that much. I could probably just lift a little bit back, but that's all right. A little bit over here. Put it on and let it move. Make sure they're not all straight. If I place a little bit of water along the next branch, pick up the blue and brown, a little bit of green together, touch it on there and then come out, I'll end up with a branch that's coming out and joining on there really easily because of the fact that it's got the grey going down the branch, like you can see here. This one probably should come out of the, right out of the picture. I can see a little bit of the wipe out where I wiped that one out and it's just come back on there. So I'm just going to actually make sure that comes out as well. So that'll come out the top of the artwork. It could run back down as well. It's in a blue, but that doesn't matter. If I actually tilt it, maybe it will run back down there and join in with the rest of the trunk. Bit of a different colour, so I'll just make it a little bit grayer. Just to change the colour of it there because it's very blue. I'll turn it back up the right way now and then put the branches on that, the leaves on it, and the colouring is a little bit in a burnt sienna colour. It's catching the light coming from over here, so a little bit of Australian red gold, I meant to say. Just clean up that palette just a fraction so that I can get a little bit of the Australian red gold in it, and that'll make my green, but the green will have a different colour. Dry the brush. The brush needs to be dry to actually put the foliage on this, and you'll get light foliage coming out through. It will take out the branches if I continue to keep scrubbing on it. It actually will take those branches out so you won't see them. It's not green enough, so I'll just add some green to it. On the darker side, just add a little bit of green. We'll have foliage up through here, foliage up through the top of the tree. Need to be drier. It needs to be a lot drier. So that's Windsor Yellow and Ultramarine. And now my brush is a lot drier and I can add to that and get a little bit of a softer effect to it. A little bit of something that's not joined up. Don't know about there. I don't like that. And the reason I don't like it is because it's crossing over, causing that. So I'm just going to put some green up in there and take some of that branch out. Some of those edges out through here, softer edges. The more I try and play with it, the more I don't like it. So I'm just going to add some darks to it. And now I'll come back with the rigger and do the finer branches on there. And so the finer branches will be in a greener sort of colour, and they'll come up into this as well. So there could be a branch coming out through there, joining up with that. So you're not left with the bigger ones. You start to get some finer branches coming up through there, or even out through the top. Now the actual trees that are in through here, we never actually put any branches on them, but now I can actually start to put some trunks, so I've just got a mixture of the darks and the greens, and I'll just wet the brush a little bit because I don't want them to be that dark. These will show up dark, but I can actually touch them with a tissue and lighten them if they're too dark. Or if they're too wet, that will take the paint straight back off. As I said, this lifts very easily. And so I'll start to come down through here and get some that are in the background here. Just some branches and bits and pieces of trees in behind here. They'll come to get a little bit higher. Some are shorter, some are longer. And so now you see a whole lot of trees appearing in that group. Now we get to this section, and what I'll do is just drop some other colour in through here, just to get it a little bit different. You can't tell the difference between the top of the water and the bottom of the water, but if I just get some other colour in there, it's way too dark, lift it up, that will just get me something else happening in there that's not just the straight paint. I'll turn it around and see what I've done. So now you see a lot of trees in the background there. I can actually just put some dark underneath some of them occasionally. And then I can come up the top. Here we've got a very straight edge, and I don't want it to be that edge. So it's got to be dry, and it's got to be just touched to actually get some change in that. Some change that gives us the top of trees instead of the top of the paint. It can't just be the paint top. And that's what I'm seeing. So I'll do some just a little bit darker in some places. But it's light as it disappears away from us. So I can see a line there in the background. So I'll take that out. Don't mind some of the lines showing up. Gets a little bit lost here. There's something happening there where it's lost. And the trees sort of just disappeared. So it's either this one has to come over the top, or this one has to be just a little bit lighter. That was a bit of a bad angle. But now I can get a little bit more off there because they're a lot drier. And the drier they are, the more will come off them. So that'll just get that section there just to have a little bit more light. The tree will get wider where it goes out to that branch. That's better. This one can have a little bit more light. It doesn't matter where it's going, it's just parts of it. So now we get down to the front, and I need to do something with this. I don't like that green bush there, and that's a matter of wetting a brush and just breaking that up. Just break it up and get it to be lighter. And places that it's got anything that's showing up too strong, I can just come back and touch it and lighten it up. Don't mind the rest of it. Okay, so in the foreground here, what's going to happen through here? It needs something to come into the water, and I'm going to get along the edge of the bank, and I'll wet the edge of the bank to start with, and just in through here, just to about there, and I'll put some darks with a trigger, which will be ultramarine and burnt sienna, in along the edge of this bank, especially in those sections there, a little bit in through here, and that can come out into the water, and that will just get something on and show you the top of the water in that area. You could just keep brushing it in places so it gets darker next to the bank. I can also put some burnt sienna in it, so it's got a different tone as well as just blue. Now it's dirty, and that's good as well. That just happened to be a dark line that turned up. I won't play in it, just let it happen. Okay, so that then brings in just some water in through. You might get a little bit further out as well in water. You see those lines appear in water. And so you've got a little bit of it coming down that way. So do I need anything here? Possibly. And I'm going to pick up burnt sienna and just see if I can get something to happen in through there. Maybe at the bottom of that tree. Just something with the darks. And that brings something in. And I was talking about this rough brush. This rough brush can do some really interesting stuff as well, as long as you don't get it too wet, and it's very dry and it's got dirty paint in it. So if I do that and get in the Australian red gold and burnt sienna, dry the brush out a little bit, I might be able to get something like just a little bit of grassy bits and pieces in through here. Just something to finish that off. It's got a straight line now. I need to break that up. Also, I could actually make some rocks or something in through here as well by wiping something out that in the edge of the water. I could actually come into about here and just wipe out some light. Just something so it's not just as it was. It gives me a different edge to the water's edge. Maybe just a little bit down through there. You also can get a downstroke in your water, like the green that's up the top. And I didn't get much of that, but I possibly could get a little bit more of that green coming down by just wetting it along. The water would have some of that showing up, not much, but just a little bit. And using the brush to just drag down with that. A bit of a different colour. Probably put some green in it. That's better. That one was too long, so I can push it back or I can take it off. I can do whatever I want in that. Just drag down some colour. Push that back up. And then I'll come across it. At that distance, so you wouldn't see a lot. Drag some of this out softer. It's not moving, so it just means that my brush needs to be wetter. Soften that. Down the dark side of the trees, I can get a little bit more interest than what I've got there because they're not that interesting. And so the dark side of the tree is this way, turned upside down, because I can pull that way. It's hard to not be pulling towards yourself. Some of the browns, so I've got brown through here. I could bring a little bit of brown up the bottom of the tree there, have something on the tree that makes it look interesting. That's my main tree there. And so that just gives me some interest in the tree. I won't outline the whole tree, but I'll just add a little bit of interest to the tree, a little bit in the fork of the tree. This is the next tree that I think will take my eye. So I'm just going to come into the intersection of that and the other tree, make that a little bit wider, and add just something around that tree to make it look darker. And as I keep saying, I can't tell what I'm doing. I'm just looking at shape and colour. That's all it is. And so now you get little bits and pieces, but I can tidy that up with a very, very fine brush, just the smaller Escoda brush, and have a look and see what's there. Take it up the edge of the tree. That's left a mark on the tree, which is good as well. That can go up a little bit diagonally and just leave marks on the tree. I won't even bother touching that. There's another intersection there, and there's a big branch there and a skinny branch. Something has to happen there. And so I'll turn that round and come back here and get that branch to come up and join up with that. So that goes over that green tree that's there and takes a little bit of that off, and it probably could have a branch on there. So remember, by adding water, I can then add a branch off that tree, just in the dirty dark colours. It was about there, so I can just add a branch by putting that on, put that on, and then come out into the edge of the tree. Now that's on the light side, but I don't know what it did, so I'll turn around and have a look. It looks like it could be a dead branch on there. Sorry for spinning it around so much, but that's the only way I can see what's there. So I really can take this back now and get less of that dark, and it will look like there's just a branch coming off the tree there that's dead, and that adds a little bit more interest to that. Cleaning up the edge of the canvas, if I turn it round, you can see it's got quite an unusual edge there. If I just wet that edge and just run the brush backwards and forwards, it'll pick up a little bit of the colour. Don't want to come up into the blue, so I'll just take that back. Could have a bit of the green, but it doesn't need that colour to be coming right through. This one has the green and around the edges, and the green doesn't match up the top of the canvas. Even though I can paint it up, I'll just come back here with the finger and just get it to mould into that. It can have a little bit of an edge in it. And so now it's got the edge in the canvas that's not as uneven. It just has an edge in it. Now we've completed painting our canvas, it's time now to seal it. Because it's actually a watercolour on a canvas, it will need to be sealed. It'll be sealed with Microdor matte spray, and the process is, I can't do it in the studio here, but I can show you that with the artwork propped slightly and this actually shaken, that you'll do smooth strokes across and cover the whole surface with the spray. The artwork shouldn't move, and when you're finished, that's put outside. It's always sprayed outside. You can't spray it inside, you'll make yourself ill. And when the smell goes on the spray, then you can bring it inside. Thanks for watching. Happy painting.